So, wouldn't you like to know that if you're going to spend all the time and the effort to press a book like this, wouldn't you want to know what kind of value are you potentially adding to this book by putting it through a press? I sure would like to know, and I'll show you how. Stay tuned. All right, so I've been doing a lot of work with comic book pressing recently. I've been making a lot of videos around pressing and getting into it and kind of building my confidence with the humidity tank process. And in this video, I'm going to share some recent clips again of another book that I put through the humidity tank, measured humidity with the hygrometer and so forth, and show you kind of how the book turned out. And in the teaser, I showed you that this is the book that I worked on, Amazing Spider-Man 239. I recently got this book from Atomic Avenue, and I looked at the defects, especially the front being kind of wrinkly and having various dents and so forth, where I gave it, I think, a 9.0, and I really felt like it was another worthy candidate for pressing. What I didn't look at was the actual value of the book. So what kind of value am I hoping to get? Because I think that when you try to improve a book, you want to figure out, is it actually going to get a higher grade? But how do you prioritize all the books that you want to press? Do you leave them in a stack? Do you just somehow maybe put them in a separate bin, like to press or something? And then I started to do that where physically on the back of the book, I would mark with the letter P, and then I'd kind of go through my bins and go, I think this one should be pressed. So I would take it out of the short box, put it through the press, and then see if I improved it. But I was kind of blindly just picking random books. I wasn't really understanding the value. And honestly, that's kind of what I did with this one. I cheated and I looked up the value of the book in a 9.8, and we're talking about ballpark roughly $300. So when I saw that 9.8 value, I was like, I'm going to press it. What I didn't really understand was, what is my limit in terms of how much can I really improve this book from a 9 to a 9.8? Do I have to wait and see? What are some defects that a press can't get out, like color rub and so forth? Any sort of tears or scratches or just other things that you can't get out with humidity and heat. And what was interesting was, I'll let you watch the clips, but then at the end, I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you some new analysis tools that I'm adding, more spreadsheet goodness, but it's going to help me identify books that I have marked as candidates for pressing, and then looking at those books and sorting them and identifying high value potential. So the potential to go from a 9 to a 9.8, 9 to a 9.6, 9.2 to 9.4 even, and look at some of those differences, and then be able to identify books in your collection that have this high value potential, right? So we're talking about the potential to sell, the potential to just to have value in your collection, but how much can you potentially add to a book through clean and pressing? Sometimes I'm just looking at a book going, I just want to try and make it better. But if you're talking about a full day's worth, now a lot of it is passive. It's either sitting in a tank or it's sitting in a press and you're waiting. But you're researching, you're tracking, you're cataloging and so forth, and it can become time consuming. And basically you want to make sure that you're spending your time wisely. So let me start the clips here where you can see the process. If you've watched my recent pressing videos, it is starting to become routine. I'm trying not to change a whole lot. I think the only thing I really keep changing is the pressure on the heat press itself. I'm still kind of messing with that to make sure that I'm not getting that line up and down the back. And again, I think I'm seeing things too with lighting and other reflections where it could be the natural curvature of the spine of the comic book. But nevertheless, I put Amazing Spider-Man 239 through the humidity tank, through the heat press, and out it came. And I reviewed the book post press and regraded it. So go ahead and check out the process, and then we'll see at the tail end the grade that I gave it. Let me know as you go through this, what grade are you thinking in your mind as far as what you would give it, and then we'll circle back and go through some of the additional analysis to evaluate and locate potential increases of value if you were able to get a book pressed. So here we go. All right, so now that I feel like I've got the humidity under control, I want to take a book that's got a few more issues than just a spine curl here, and I'm going to put this book in the humidity tank overnight. And this is Amazing Spider-Man 239. Lots of issues here, so I want to kind of document these issues here in the corner box. Look at all that wrinkling. So again, kind of have to, here's the natural kind of look. Looks great, looks real sharp with the corner. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these books that have really, really nice corners, like barely even, I mean, there's like no bindery tearing at all. But you can see just so many little dents. It's all choppy and wavy throughout the book. So a perfect candidate for pressing. Again, that corner, really, really nice, solid, but just a slight fold over, hangover on the side there. I mean, there are not a ton of issues. Down here was another big problem. Get that in the light here. Right there by the, right in here. Just some unevenness and waviness. There are a couple of spine ticks. One tiny one right there. And this one right here. And some of this is spine tick, and some of it might be a little bit of the art. It's hard to tell exactly, but I believe that's color breaking. But I would send it to CGC because it's a valuable book, just with that alone, and see if it still retains the 9.8 or if that's a 9.6. Here's the back of the book. Some ink or color rub right there. But again, we're talking about just lots of, let me shift it this way, lots of little dents. There you go. So right there, just see all up and down. So this is going to go into the tank, and hopefully we'll get all of those issues out. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to find books, and I'm trying to give them a goal. I'm trying to see if that's a tear there or not. I'm trying to give these books a goal, like a grade that I think is achievable. I gave this book a 9 because of the waviness and just the general choppiness around the side of the book. Looking at it again, I feel like it could be a 9.2 possibly, but my goal for this book is to improve it up to a 9.6. So this book has really nice value in a 9.6, and I got it for a great deal. And feel like in a 9.0 it still is, I think, somewhat attractive. You know, if it got the white pages, which it should, you could see those pages are pretty white. So a 9.0 white pages of this book is still valuable, but I feel like I can get this up to a 9.6 if I'm able to properly give it humidity and a really, really nice solid press. So this is the next book that's going to go through the humidity process, and I will see you at the next step. All right, I just wanted to show you this Amazing Spider-Man 249 book that is it 249? Let's look. 239. My bad. So 239, great Hobgoblin Spider-Man cover. So this is how I put it in the humidity tank. I find the centerfold with the staples. I have my Weber grill tray, and I have this mesh cloth that came with the press. I saved it. I'm supposed to use it for t-shirts, but I lay it down on the bottom, just give the book something to lay on in lieu of a magazine backing board. You can use that too. If you take a magazine backing board, put it in a bag, and you can lay that down. But I like this because it's bigger than the comic. So this is how it looked, and if you've seen my other videos where the comic comes out of the humidity bath, and you can see the page. See how it's just perfectly crisp, and it's the shape that you would expect. When we look at this after it comes out of the bath, you'll see additional waves, and this will be much flatter. It's almost like propped up here. You can see that. This will actually start to press down and flatten kind of on its own. So I'm going to leave the book like this. The only other thing that I do is I put a couple of, I guess they're called like window screens. Again, it's probably not necessary, I think. They are just a touch heavy, which always makes me nervous. But I lay them on just in case there's some pretty substantial water droplets that just sort of float up inside the tank. I don't really feel like this is necessary anymore. I'm going to practice with a book that really doesn't have any value, maybe one of those free comic book day books that I practice on every now and then. And you could see even the weight of that is pressing it down, almost giving it like a little bit of a cold press. So again, not necessary, but you could slip on a magazine backing board on the top. I'm just going to leave it off. I really don't see that as being necessary anymore with the screens. And then I just drop my hygrometer in there like so, and then cover it up, and I watch the relative humidity. And that's really the process. And what I've been doing is leaving these books in for a full 24 hours. So just let it really just kind of soak it all in. And I've gotten better results, maybe not perfect, but definitely better results leaving these books in for the 24 hours. So there you go. That's the process for ASM 239, and we will see when this book comes out of the humidity tank what it looks like. All right, we are back to take a look at the humidity bath, and this book stayed in here overnight. And you can see here from the measurement of the few times that I checked in with the app. I guess I could take the whole advertisement for Scout Comics off here. Again, looking at the condensation and the buildup, same as before, same as you've seen in other videos. It's definitely there. So I want to open this up and take a look and see if I can consistently now reproduce the results I'm looking for, which is I want to see these books have some dampness to them, some curling, some waviness based on the humidity. So let's open this up. And there's my hygrometer that I use to measure the humidity. So we'll take that out. Take off the window screens, and I can smell it. Boy, between the humidity and the comic, there's a certain smell when you take that lid off. So something's happening in there. So yeah, again, it's not perfect. It does feel just slightly damp to the touch, but it's super flat. I mean, it's working. I think without like having somebody say, "Oh yeah, that's exactly the way the book is supposed to feel or look," I can just tell. It's just slightly heavier. It's obviously very curled, and this is exactly how that other Fantastic Four book looked. And I think this is going to be ready for the press. So I have my press warming up. We're going to do 15 minutes, and I'm going to watch it this time, make sure I actually do set the 15 minutes. I've also loosened this just slightly, and I'll do just a little bit more too while I'm here, because I don't need to overly press the book. I think that was the one, I don't want to say mistake, but something with Fantastic Four 247 that I noticed was that the book just had a slight line across the edge that hopefully you can see. This book doesn't really have right now. So we'll see as this comes out of the press in the next step, if it's going to have that. Same thing on the back if we turn it over. It's all kind of puffed up, but nothing, there's no line or anything. So there is some issues there. As you can see, again, there's the color rub right in here. And there was that spine tick. You can see the spine tick's a little bit better from this side, right? There's one there, maybe hair, couple of hairline right there. So again, not a perfect book by any stretch, but it's a book that I feel like if I can get this pressed out and get this back into 9/6 white pages, that would be a victory because of the price that I paid. Again, I'm paying for, I would say, under fair market value for a 9.4 raw book. I am not paying, obviously, 9.8 prices, and obviously the book is not slabbed. So for the price that I'm paying, I feel like it's a good investment, low risk, high reward, to be able to go through this technique end to end. So I'm going to get this into the press, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, here we go. So this is the book that's been in the press for not quite 24 hours, 21, 22 hours, overnight for sure, and most of today, but was getting really anxious because this book was pretty affected by the humidity, was almost laying completely flat. So what I want to see is when I put the sandwich together, if we're able to kind of if I folded the book over and I didn't create new creases up and down the book, right? So I want it to fold back together like a comic and lay flat. And when I was putting the book in the press, I was very concerned about the book, maybe like the cover popping open and then pressing this way instead of just laying flat and being pressed down. One thing that I did modify is I did loosen the press just slightly because I was worried about that. I was worried about it being mispressed or misaligned. So let's open this up and see how the book did. All right, so I'm going to undo the sandwich here and take off the plate. And I should be able to tell pretty much right away if the book turned out the way that I wanted to or if it was misaligned or miswrapped. There it is, ASM 239. I'm going to slide this out. Doesn't look too bad. Let's see here in the sandwich. Looks pretty good, except I do notice some of those dents right there in the corner box. But for the most part, looks pretty good. Not bad. Let me take this out of the sandwich and investigate it a little bit more closely. Some of it I'm already not too happy with, right there on the side. But let's take a little bit of a closer look. All right, here is the same book out of the press, out of the sandwich. And I just want to give it a little bit of a closer look here. I will say that on the edge here, right where that color breaking spine tick, that dent, that crease is more or less gone. You can just barely see the remnants of that there. Corner looks really good. Just a very, very slight softening or curling, but that looks really good. Super straight bottom edge. Looks good down there as well. So I think what I'm still concerned with here is this edge right along the side, right there, as you can kind of go up and down. It didn't seem to really take, I mean, it's very subtle. Maybe I'm seeing things, but I noticed like right in there, trying to get the light on it. It's hard to see really, but there's just a little bit of creasing right there. The overall cover, as I shine the light back and forth around, cover looks really great. It really was just the corner box here that was giving me some trouble. So like right up in here and over here as well, along the spine. Yeah, couple of creases right there. Again, super sharp on that corner. That looks like a crease, but it's actually just the art from the webbing. That's very flat. So I'm happy with it, and let me explain my my level or relative happiness, I will say. So first of all, loosening the press definitely got rid of what I would say is that line that's going down. So that is, I mean, I've pressed, I don't know how many books where I've either gotten the line or I haven't. So my the balance is making sure that you're not creating additional creases, obviously, with where you're putting the paper and everything, but you want the heat and the pressure to also get out uh, the creases and the defects that you're trying to correct. Now, there's other techniques. This is where spot humidity, tack iron, steel ball rolling along the book. That's going to help the book in other ways that just straight humidity and a press may not. But from an overall perspective, I mean, if we're looking at just those two creases, and I'm trying to zoom in myself again, I really don't see any spine damage except for right in there. And again, a press is not going to correct that anyway, but there's just a little bit of, it's not even a spine tick. It's almost like a spine tear. Just, I mean, and again, here's the here's how tiny it is compared to my fingernail, right? So we're talking about millimeters. But it's the only one that I see that is that significant. This is the other one that's just a tiny, tiny slight color break right in there. But if I kind of back up again, looking at it from the naked eye, it does disappear. And this is something that, I want to prove out with CGC, because I've heard that if you have to angle things and use special lighting to see a defect, then CGC is going to let that pass. Again, I don't know if I believe that quite yet. Take a look at the back. Corner has a little bit of softening there, but it's not too bad. Pretty good coloring otherwise. It does feel a little miswrapped over here. As you can see, this is hanging over, and I don't remember if I did that or if that's how the book was, but you can see the front cover is coming around the back now. There is that color rub. There is ink, so that's not dirt, that's just ink on the book. And that's always going to play a factor, right? So I feel like this book now, there's a few other spots there. This would be a good book to send in as an example, for me anyway, where I would want to see, hey, how much of a loss in quality is that color rub, right? So this book has a fairly noticeable color rub on the back top, and then a few of those dots on the bottom. A tiny tear right there, and I would say a couple of minor dents up in the corner box right here. And then you'd have to kind of figure out what kind of grade do you give a book like this where it has those defects, right? So I don't know exactly. Each book becomes kind of unique and special in its own way. And I would want to send this book in to see what I would get. But what grade would you give this comic book? You saw the defects. They are what they are. You saw kind of the before and after now with this. And again, this book was completely flat almost, and definitely affected by the humidity, and came out looking like a typical comic book. So I am very happy with that, and my confidence is building with the humidity tank, and really believe that this is working. But I didn't get it up to a 9.8 either. And does that matter? I mean, that's what we're all trying for, is the highest grade possible. But what grade would you give the book? For me, I feel like this is a 9.4. I think it's a 9.4 without question. I think it has the qualities of a 9.8 in terms of the corner sharpness, all around paper sharpness. The angling of the book and the page doesn't really matter so much. That's not going to detract from the grade. I just feel like that spine tick and the color rub is really what's doing it. I think these are negligible, these little dents up there. I mean, I could certainly steam it and press it again, but I think I'm satisfied with this book being a 9.4, and I'm just going to leave it as is for now. So let me know what you think. Would you press this again? Would you say it's a 9.6? I really don't believe it's a 9.8. I think the color rub on the back alone makes it a 9.4. So there you go. All right, so I wanted to talk about how I am going to identify books that I want to press going forward. So you just watched a whole series and sequence of clips where I took Amazing Spider-Man 239, start to finish, regraded the book. And in this case, I've got it right up here. Now, not the best example, so I'm going to do this again until you're sick of watching pressing videos and Google Sheet analysis videos. But I'm going to show you hopefully a more positive outcome than this. But this is a good starting example, hopefully to kind of get those juices flowing as far as how you'd want to better organize your collection here digitally. Now, the first line here, Amazing Spider-Man 239, I recently acquired this. And what I'm doing is I'm marking the grade before the press, which in this case, I gave the book a 9.0. And the CGC value before, again, this is real value today. So this is as of this morning when I checked this book and checked the GPA values and cover price and go collect. And a 9.0 currently has a fair market value in a CGC 9.0 of $100. Now, GPA is a little bit less than that. So if GPA is your standard, I understand that. And I may have a switch in here where I say use the aggregate or average of all three sources or only use GPA. I'm still on the fence with that. Right now I'm using all three: cover price, go collect, and GPA. So the sort of consensus CGC value of ASM 239 and a 9.0 is 100. Take it or leave it, plus or minus 10, 15, 20 bucks here or there. So the weird thing is that in a 9.4, the consensus says that it's less than 100. And it's just, there aren't that many books in those grades, that have value. So oddly enough, after the press, I lost $14. Do I believe that's true? No, I believe a 9.4 should sell for at least what a 9.0 is selling or more. So if we take a look at the second row here, or row 3, this is the Vision and Scarlet Witch. Now this one, when I graded it, just out of the package, out of the order that I received, I gave it an 8.0. And then after pressing, I regraded it and felt that it was a 9.4. So the 8.0 value I'm capturing because I want to see two things. I want to see the potential gain, but then the actual potential gain, right? I still haven't sold the book. It's just the I would say market value that you've added to the comic by trying to improve it through some method of comic book CPR. So in the case of Vision and Scarlet Witch, with 8.0, it was $32. Again, fair market value of a CGC 8.0 graded slab. And then in a 9.4, I had added $28 of value to the book. So a 9.4 would be worth $60. And that's kind of where, I was starting to do this and going, well, is that worth your time? Is that worth your trouble? You're adding $28 of value? Possibly, certainly, yeah. Here's another example, and this is how I'm going to start tracking my books going forward. So the tough part for me is that, so what I would do, and you've seen me in some of these screening videos, is I would write the grade on the back, and I would put a letter P next to it to indicate that I think it could be pressed. I was not storing that anywhere digitally. So across my entire collection, I have, an ocean full of short boxes, and they're filled with books that I feel could be improved with some sort of pressing technique. I don't have that digitally. You are literally looking at the only 3 books that I am tracking digitally that have to do with pressing. So, and part of this was I didn't feel like I was a good enough presser to really care about this stuff. But now that I've actually seen some real value here, and I'm going to go back and add some of the books that I've pressed recently. I pressed Raiders of the Lost Ark #1, and a few others if you check out my recent pressing videos. I've also ruined some books if you want to look at those videos too. So it's a really interesting process if you go back and watch my whole series of how I'm building my confidence, right? I'm probably never going to be able to tell you that I'm a professional presser unless I start charging money for this. I feel like I'm an amateur and I'm learning. And for me, it gives me a lot of satisfaction to know that, like, you know what? I pressed this book up to its maximum potential. I really don't think that I personally can improve it anymore. And I own this book. This is my book. So I don't really necessarily want someone to kind of figure out if they can get these couple of little dents out, unless I'm really, really trying to speculate hard on it. And I want to either, put it permanently in a slab for my PC. But if this just sits in my bins ungraded, I'm very satisfied knowing that I pressed it. Going forward, though, here's what I want to do. I want to take a book like this, and in row 4, this Uncanny X-Men 165 newsstand. This is something that I would say it's not a rare book by any stretch, but it has defects on it. My personal copy has defects where I feel like if I were able to press it, it could get up into the either 9.4, 9.6, or 9.8 range as indicated here. So what I have going in this sort of pressing priority sheet that I've created is I want to find books in my digital ledger, my collection ledger, that I have said is a particular grade but has the potential for pressing. And then what I want to do is I want to be able to see the potential gain in value, right? So here is this book in a 9.0, which if we scoot over, we'll see that the CGC value of this book in a 9.0 is $26. Now, you have to be realistic too. Do you believe every book can be pressed to a 9.8? You'd like to hope so, but maybe not. So here is a $98 potential value book that is sitting in my bin unpressed, and it might be something that I would want to spend a little bit of time with if I do feel like I could move it from a 9 to a 9.8. Now, I've looked at that book, and it has some color breaks on it in the spine, so it might be another one of those 9.4, 9.6s. So you'd have to balance the satisfaction of improving it up from a 9 to a 9.4, let's say. But in terms of your time being spent efficiently, your time is money. So if you're spending a couple of days going through X-Men 165, moving it from a 9.0, where you're already getting kind of $26 CGC value, and here again, it's not that you're taking a loss, but the 9.0, 9.2, 9.4, and 9.6 grades are all about the same. There's not a lot out there in the inventory, and nobody really cares about this grade, right? They would want that book only in a 9.8. It's not a key. So you'd have to be a hardcore X-Men fan to want this book in a 9.0. So anyway, these are the kind of things that I'm looking at. So even though I've indicated this book should be pressed to improve it, it's not going to get a 9.8. So I can use this spreadsheet to say, no, this is not worth my time. It's not worth my trouble, even though it can be pressed. So I'm just going to leave it as a 9.0. So I'm going to start to build out this information so that I can better understand which books are sitting in my inventory that have the greatest potential to increase in value. And again, talking about adding fair market value to your collection, your existing collection that is yours and that you love. And to be able to go through and find books that can be upgraded through that press. Then on the flip side, I have another sheet that tells me here that based on these values, these are the books that should go to CGC. And I have a filter here where I'm starting at any book in my collection where the current CGC value is $75 or greater. these are books that potentially should go off to CGC. And what I'm going to add, as you can see down here with X-Men 165, is an additional filter that says, hey, if it's a candidate for pressing and the value of 9.8 is also above 75, then you might want to take it for a spin and see if you can press it and improve it. So I'm merging books that I feel like have a static grade, meaning it can't be improved with a press. I'm merging those books with the pressing candidates and looking at a nice combination of data here where I can quickly identify one of two things. One, I want to take a stack of books. They're good to go to CGC. I want to grab them quickly from my inventory, send them off for grading. Or number two, here's a stack that I want to first press, and then after the press, I will send off for grading. Or in that second step, like a 2B, I've improved them enough to go back into my personal collection. I don't need to get them graded. I'm going to keep them raw, and so on. So I'm using a lot of this information regarding pressing candidates and pressing value potential to continue to improve my collection. So there you go. That's it. Happy collecting, and see you next time.